Welcome to the Brew with Paulina, and we're missing Lex today. So Lex, we'll see you next. We'll see you on Wednesday and next Friday. But we have an exciting show for you today. We're going to talk about the goblin of inflation and deflation, and what's the difference between disinflation and deflation. What's going on, and how are companies reacting to that? So stay tuned. We've got a lot to unpack for you guys. Hey, Paulina, how's it going?
Hey, Molly. It's going well. Busy February. How are you?
I know it's earnings seasons. You were saying. So
Yeah.
a big February. So let's dive in. So give us the descriptions of everything so that everyone's on the same page. You know, we're all feeling inflation, but give us the lowdown on all three categories.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are seeing a shift in the economy, and many people might not be feeling this shift, but it is happening at a, I would say, moderate pace. We are going from inflation to a disinflationary or deflationary period. So what does that mean? Let's break it down. So I'll give you some definitions here. So inflation, I feel like we're all very accustomed to it, is the general rise of prices in the economy of goods and services. We've all been suffering from that for the past, 3+ years. But as things are coming back to normal in a post-pandemic environment, the economy has moderated that inflation, and we're in a disinflationary period where the inflation rate has fallen. It still remains positive, but prices steadily have come down. The thing is, prices continue. Actually, let me rephrase that. So disinflation is when prices continue to rise, but at a slower rate. So there's still inflation present, but it's just increasing at a slower rate. But interestingly enough, we're also seeing deflation, and that is a general drop in price levels in an economy. So you might have been hearing deflation, disinflation, people might be using them interchangeably. Interestingly enough, they're both present in the economy. So that's, getting the definitions out of the way. And we're, like you said, we're in earnings season, and we've been hearing some commentary from executives around this and how it's impacting their revenues, and what that might look like in terms of their guidance and outlooks throughout the rest of the year.
Okay, great. And then I'll just, I always put my thing in, but inflation, let's just point also and take a look under the hood that's from a devaluation of the dollar. So things cost more because the dollar doesn't buy as much. And one of these great books to check out when is Creature of Jekyll Islands by EdwardGriffin, a powerful book. So do you really understand how money works, how the Fed works, how the Fed and the government are linked? And so before we get into that, I have a couple questions on that. But how are companies reacting to this wave that we're feeling?
Well, it's clear that there have been prices falling, especially when you look at the retailers. Here are the main companies that are providing a lot of the insights in disinflation. So we're seeing some food sales. They have decelerated for 11 months in a row. This is data from a Wall Street firm for 4 weeks ending in December 31st. Apart from the falling sales, like I said, we're in earnings season, and so looking at spice maker McCormick, they reported a 3% decline in volumes, and that's because of lower consumption. They saw U.S. consumer sales fall 4%. So the company, as a result, was more cautious on its outlook looking forward due to uncertainty around consumer health. You also had 3M, who is in the consumer goods space as well. They had a revenue miss recently in their most recent quarter due to softer consumer discretionary spending. So basically, what disinflation and deflation does, it puts pressure on company sales. And as a result, it could be, I will say, falling prices, of course, it's a positive for consumers. It puts less pressure on their monthly budgets, and it's a positive for companies as well because it reduces their extraneous commodity costs and other expenses. But over time, it could lead to lower consumer demand and a buildup of their inventory. And if that's the case, it could lead to softer sales, and it could impact their profit margins and so forth. So it could be a destructive uh, downward path.
Okay, got it. And so what are some companies that, benefit from inflation? What are some companies that benefit from some of these, this I feel like this is a really incredible time for people. And uh when when if inflate the printing of money causes, and we call printing, it's not really printing, it's more of an adjustment of a digital ledger at this point. But when we have a huge cascade of currency into the system, I think 80% of our currency currently in circulation was printed in the last few years, and that drops the value of the dollar. um, People, that is a hidden tax. And so people start to feel that when they go buy food, as you're saying. And so when we, the everyday retailer, might feel it, um, uh, what's that crux where a company might feel it? You talk about their supply chain, but where's that point where a company really starts to hunker down and adjust operations?
Yeah, well, so we saw the companies benefit from inflation during the height of the pandemic and even kind of after the pandemic was subsiding. That was a time when a lot of people, the US consumers were getting their stimulus checks, and that caused a massive amounts of inflation in the economy where people, were spending those checks, and they were able to buy a variety of different things. That, as a result, caused prices in the economy to rise, leading to an inflationary period. And how did that impact retailers across the board? Well, retailers were able to increase their prices, and customers, they were able at that time to kind of deal with those rising prices because they had extra reserves in their bank accounts. So they didn't really feel the pressure at that point. But as their bank reserves were depleting and going down steadily year after year, but higher prices for retailers were still, sustained higher. That imbalance between the depleting bank reserves but higher prices, it was growing wider, and people weren't able to sustain the higher price levels in the economy. So
Right.
over time, consumers were really feeling the pain of inflation. As a result, at the same time, you had the Federal Reserve that they were increasing rates in order to bring inflation down. Over a year and a half period, inflation has come down, and consumer confidence actually has increased around inflation. They do feel that inflation has been lowering. So as a result, now we're seeing disinflation and in some cases deflation with some retailers. But at the same time, inflation is still present. It's still an issue for consumers. And I think that companies that are able to weather this disinflationary period are the ones that are going to add value to consumers. What type of value? Well, think about retailers that have strong value propositions, like they have deals, so you're able to get a good bang for your buck. You're able to get quality items at a discount, for example. So those are the types of companies that I think are able to kind of weather this disinflationary period.
Got it. I know we don't have you for too long, so we'll keep it short today. But I think it's important to understand that we have this time of war, and if the government were to tax us personally to go police overseas, I'm not saying we shouldn't or shouldn't be there. I think there's a lot that we as a world should always address and keep our eye out to help our fellow man. But I think when the decision to go over there might have a bit of a pushback from people if they felt it so drastically, the connection of going out there and not being able to buy food at home. And so I think it's important to really understand how money's made. And then also some of these statistics that whether it's the polls that how people are feeling, I really like those. And what I would take an internal poll. So how are you feeling? Because if just take your own, and I would go off of what your everyday, when you're making your decisions, as far as are we through inflation? Are we feeling it okay? Because if you aren't, then, and we're still in the thick of it, then companies such as in war times, prior Great Depressions, movie tickets are always things that, what do people go to when they can't afford anything? So they go to the small, bite-sized entertainment. So those companies would flourish. And then you have, things you can't do without. So food, and you have your anything for your kids and your pets, and those become extreme needs. And I think with food, you can see that when food prices start to climb, that's statistically over history tied to revolution in some sense at home. So as far as those little bite-sized things that companies out there might be, in inflationary times, in war times, in Great Depressions, what companies do you anticipate to be one of those great bets to back and support because people will flock to?
Well, two companies that I'm looking at are TJX. They are the operators of Home Goods, TJ Maxx, and those off-price retailers. And I think that with sustained higher prices in the economy, people are going to want, like I said, a bang for their buck. They're going to
Right.
want value.
Yeah.
In TJX, I'm sure we have all gone to these to its stores, and they have really high quality merchandise at low prices, and people love that treasure hunting experience as well. So they also have, if you want something designer too, something more high end, they have that as well at a lower cost. So there's a lot of value across these stores. They also have a home goods business. So if you're looking to get a good value on, a redecoration of your home, they have a lot of really nice products there as well. So there's a variety of different merchandise. And I think that customers are going to want to stretch their dollar as much as they can, and they're going to be able to do that at places like a TJX, for example. So these off-price retailers, along with their competitors, their names are escaping me right now, but the off-pricers, I think, are going to be doing well.
Right. I am not a very big shopper, but I think Amazon is probably up there as well. They have a lot of those discount purchases, and I think but we went back to, on a prior episode, we talked about how people are stepping away from purchasing things and more towards purchasing experiences. So it'd be interesting to know what kind of company, maybe movies would be one of those experiences. And during COVID, when those checks came out to everyone, it was really interesting to see that they flocked to bought, GameStop, that whole saga, and meme stocks, and that people are starting to maybe not buy things and maybe going beyond buying experiences, but going into starting to build their own portfolio because equities seem to stay in tow with inflation. It's a really great place to park your money. So getting into trading with learning how to use protective puts and options is a great hedge for inflation. And you can really start to buy those companies that you personally use and know. Any thoughts on that? And that'll be the last question and on this Friday.
Yeah, I think we're going to continue to see that trend of people spending on experiences. That's what consumers are valuing more nowadays. We're coming up in the spring and the summer months, and I think that travel is going to be a priority, and we're going to see companies in those sectors continue to do well. At the same time, there's going to be probably a pullback in discretionary purchases like big things like TVs, electronics, and so forth. I think overall, consumers are going to be really careful as to where they allocate their funds. So even when it comes to traveling or entertainment, they're going to be looking for deals and other ways to make sure that they're not spending too much money. And to your point, at the same time, trying to grow their wealth over time. I think part of that allocation of capital will probably be towards investing or trading any way that they can try to beat inflation. So I think a combination of all those things is fair game.
Agree. And now I'm going to get flack for this, but here's a little home tip. So I'm in Hollywood, and Hollywood's really expensive to go out. So we decide, and really we're health nuts. So we really like healthy food. So we actually have a cook that comes to the house, and, having an accounting background, the comparison of the money that we save by having someone come to the house and prepare really healthy foods is actually on par to eating out a lot. So if you're a large family and you're struggling to keep up, there's a lot of people looking for jobs, and you can teach them anything. And even if it's just the basic, it's a really nice hack. So whatever, we're all in this together, and we are I think it's really, epigenetics change genes, and this is an epigenetic force for us to start to get into trading and to start to put our dollar as our vote into companies that actually change and affect the world. Thank you, Paulina, for coming today. It was a great show, and we'll see you next Friday.
Great. Thank you. Have a good rest of your weekend.
Bye.
Bye.